Hey everybody, welcome back to Middle of the Res Road. It's Ricky, Lou, and myself here today, and we also have a very special guest. So everybody welcome Chris.
Hey, how you guys doing?
So before we get into learning more about Chris and what he does, let's get into our trivia question, which I think Ricky has ready.
And here's our trivia question, sponsored by Talon Metals. I was actually, again, scrolling on Facebook, and I found this one, and it's super interesting. It's which company makes the most money per second? And I will tell you guys.
Okay. Can't wait to hear. So what kind of events do you have for us today, Lou?
Well, for powwows, we have the Battle Point Traditional in Sugar Point, Minnesota, September 16th, 17th, and 18th. And then for events, there's a mini harvest festival at the Duluth Children's Museum. That's Saturday the 17th from 10 to 12.
Fun.
Yeah.
I might have to go to that.
And then there's also a walk for recovery at Leif Erikson Park in Duluth. That is also on the 17th from 1 to 5. And we have the 9th annual Light Up the Night run/walk at Washington Elementary in Cloquet.
It's a busy weekend.
That is on the 16th at 6:45 p.m.
Also, winter's coming. We're going to have to figure out.
Don't say the W word.
For real.
I don't know about you guys, but I like the cold.
I do too. I'm ready for fall.
Yeah.
I don't mind the winter after the snow already gets here, but that like transition phase where it's like ice cold outside, but there's no snow or anything
Right,
fun to do.
yeah.
It's like, oh, this kind of sucks for a few weeks.
Just stuck in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take fall.
I love fall. I wish we could have fall for 6-7 months and a couple months of winter.
Just sweater weather all the time.
It'd be amazing.
Is it the colors? Is the fall colors? Is that your thing?
No, I think it's just everything. The colors.
No
and
bugs.
No bugs. Comfy
Valid.
clothes. Not sweating my ass off. But I haven't seen you guys in a while, and I know you guys just got back from Colorado.
We did.
So I want to hear just a little bit about your trip before we get started.
Well, naturally, I'm afraid of heights. And so we were going up, I don't know what mountain it was, but it was a dirt road, and on the edge it was just a sheer drop off. So I was sweating the whole time. Like, I was grabbing the back of a headrest because I was so terrified, and my hands got bruised.
Oh my God.
Where were you guys? Were you in like the Garden of the Gods or?
We went there. We were in Denver for the first 3 days, and then we went to Colorado Springs for 2.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to check out Garden of the Gods, Red Rock Amphitheater,
Oh, sick.
Seventh Falls.
Seven Falls, yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Mountains are beautiful.
I love it out there.
Yeah, I want to move there.
Right?
He wants to move there, but then I'm gonna be like, let's go to the mountains, and he's gonna have bruised hands again.
One fun thing for me, like wrapping my brain around Colorado, is that it's actually a warm weather state. So it's only cold in the mountains. Like everybody thinks like, oh yeah, you got the mountains, and you always see those like Aspen. You know, they always talk about Aspen, Colorado, and all the movies that it's featured in. But really, it's more like Missouri or Kansas weather,
Right, like they get a couple inches of snow, and like that's it.
and it melts right away. Yeah.
Melts right away, yeah. That's what our friends were telling us who lived there. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you guys eat any good food?
I had In-N-Out for the first time.
I love it.
It
No,
was good.
it's so good.
We did go to this place called Slice 420. I thought it was going to be like cannabis-infused pizza or whatever, but it's not.
It was really good pizza.
Yeah, it was really
Story
good.
would have been a lot cooler if it was.
On their wall, it said something like, "We do not infuse our pizza with cannabis."
Yeah.
Be a lot cooler if you did.
Yeah.
Oh, well, cool. Well, I'm glad you guys had a good trip, but I missed you guys. So
It was
glad
a
you're back.
long week.
I know.
Yeah, we definitely want to go back within a year.
All right. Anyway, so let's dive in to learning a little bit more of what Chris does. So, Chris, can you introduce yourself again and just tell us about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up?
Yeah, so Christopher Hennigan, I actually moved around a lot when I was younger. So I went to 4 different high schools, Uppsala, Albany, Cloquet, and then I actually graduated from the Fond du Lac Ojibwe School over here a while ago. I got some kids, so I have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old boy. Both very, very active kids. My oldest boy's into skateboarding. Breaks my heart a little bit. He doesn't play football because he'd be amazing at it, but he's got his passion and he's good at it, and he works very, very hard at it. And yeah, he posts a lot of videos that just freak me out. So I know that he's getting good. So, and then my youngest guy, he just finished up football on Wednesday, so I coached his last game, and he's in 6th grade. So this will be the last year that I coach him for a while and let somebody else mentor him for a bit. He doesn't like listening to his dad anyway. So.
I don't think any kid does.
No, it's ridiculous. We're like arguing in the middle of the game, and I'm like, "Don't worry, this one's mine." Yep. And then I have a fiance, so me and her have been together 11 years now. I've been engaged for about 6 of them. Yeah, I know I'm dragging my feet, but
I was gonna say, what's taking so long?
So she went back to school, and she just finished up her nurse practitioner program in May.
Oh, nice.
So the last 3 years, she's been going to school, going to work, and then she's also in the military. So she has drills on the week. Yeah, she's
a go-getter.
Totally out of my league. Outkick my coverage.
I was gonna say, can she beat you up?
Oh man, I don't even try, man. If you ever hear about a domestic at my house, come make sure I'm okay.
Oh, I love it. So where do you guys reside now?
So we live in Cloquet, just over by Churchill. So really sweet spot. I love the community here. I'll never forget my first day at Fond du Lac. I remember going there and just walking into the classroom, and finally, for once in my life, every single person in the room wasn't white. You know, I'm like, where am I? This place is magical. So yeah, as soon as I went to the Fond du Lac school, I was like, yep, this is my home. This is where I'm supposed to be in the world. So yeah, I've stayed close to the community ever since 2005. Went to college for a little while in Grand Rapids. That was about a year and a half I was gone. Then came back and lived in Cloquet and went to school at Scholastica. And yeah, I don't plan on leaving until at least my youngest graduates high school. So I'll probably be here another decade or so. And yeah, the RBC and the facilities, you know, pre-COVID when it was all open and it was fun. Mm-hmm. I love taking advantage of all of that, going up there, working out, swimming, sauning, hanging out with all the kids in the gym, talking smack, playing 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope that
they open some stuff up again.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
They were doing the floors, right?
Oh, yeah, I think they are. At the Cloquet Community Center?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned you went to college. What did you study? What is your degree in?
So, like my man Ricky over here, I went to school for my associate's degree, and I just got my generals done first. I did that. Realistically, I didn't even plan on going to college. I mean, Fond du Lac made me do it, so I went to the high school. So like, you're taking classes at the college, and I said no. So I signed up. I think I signed up for an art class or something stupid. You know what a high schooler would do. But yeah, to answer your question, I graduated with a marketing degree, and I minored in finance.
Okay.
So, and I got that degree from Scholastica. So I got a 4-year degree in marketing, so a business degree.
What made you, what sparked your interest in that?
So one of the career counselors at the college talked me out of my original major, which was exercise physiology, and I was going to minor in psych. So I wanted to be a sports psychologist. So, you know, when you're watching an NFL team, and they have a Justin Jefferson, and all of a sudden he just can't catch anything to save his life. It's not necessarily a physical issue he's having. He's probably, some psychological or, things going on.
Weird.
Yeah. So I wanted to be the guy to fix those people. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
And that would have been cool too.
So they really have those?
Yeah. Sports psychologists.
Yeah. I didn't think that was a
weird
thing. When
there's that much money being invested into any profession, you can't, they got
crazy
specialists for everything. You get, they probably have their own personal nutritions, their personal trainers, obviously, and they're probably going through a few of those a year. And then you also have the athletic trainers that are already on staff with the teams. Then you have all of these required things that they have to do now. Like the rookies will have to go speak to a financial advisor, right? So they have to have financial training before they sign their contracts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they're taking it a lot more seriously than they used to. Before it was like, here's a bunch of money, figure it out.
So what made you decide to pursue marketing then?
Oh yeah, sorry. Getting
Yeah.
back to that. So the counselor had essentially told me if I didn't know anybody famous or any professional athletes, that it was gonna be really hard to break into that industry. So she's like, you should have a more realistic goal, right? Same stereotype that always happens with teachers and mediocre thinkers. And so she was like, maybe a degree in business. And I was like, okay. What kind of business degree should I get? And she's like, well, the easiest one's probably going to be marketing. And that was how it happened.
Oh.
Yeah. So she essentially convinced me that it'd be easy to get a marketing degree. Go do that instead.
Are you forever grateful for her advice? Do you love it?
No, I mean, marketing was not sweet. Like, I don't know. I don't mind it. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. Like, I didn't want to market businesses and be like one of those guys off of Mad Men or later on when I figured out what marketing in, modern times is essentially Google and Facebook, right? So
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah, so I started looking into Google Ads and getting those certifications, which you can do for free online. And I was like, nah, I'm not really interested in this either. So, I mean, I enjoy talking to other business owners and talking to small businesses about marketing. But as far as like going out and trying to recruit marketing clients or working for a business and having marketing events and deadlines and all those things, just not something I'm after right now.
So you minored in finance?
Yep.
So what do you do now? What's your career? Or what's your job?
So currently I'm a financial advisor.
Okay, so finance is a little more what you're passionate about. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Finance is something I've always talked to everybody about, even when it was like unacceptable to do that. Like it's weird because now like our generation, right, millennials and then Gen Zers, it's normal. Like we tell each other how much money we make or how much we're getting paid or
Right.
how much we paid for items. But like our grandparents, you don't talk about money. That's totally
super
It's a
taboo.
secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is to be held close, quiet, confidential. And I know our parents, probably the Gen Yers, they started talking about money a little bit more, but it wasn't until our generation where that was normalized.
Yeah, I think it's more to like. I think it's also has something to do with like the recent, what's it called, the Great Resignation or something like that.
Yeah.
Where everyone's like looking for new jobs, and I think it's because more people are talking about their wages and finding out that we're all doing the same jobs, but we're not getting paid the same.
Oh yeah, I mean, that push started with females realizing they were making 78 cents or something to the male
Yeah.
dollar. It's like that's absurd.
For the same amount of work.
And I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I generally, if I have the option to work with a man or a woman, I'm going after the female employee for sure. Because women, in my experience, more diligent, they worked harder, they had to overcome a lot more hurdles to get to where they're at, so they're taking it a lot more seriously.
And I don't know about you, but women are way more organized than I am. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's something I probably don't even think about. It's just an extra added bonus.
Yeah.
So how long have you been a financial advisor?
So I've been a licensed advisor since October of 2020, so about 2 years now, going on 2 years. Yeah.
How was that during COVID?
Oh, I mean, it was a blessing, to be honest with you, because so I ended up getting laid off like most people during COVID. So COVID was announced, the national emergency, on March 14th. And for the last 2 weeks of my job, I was literally taking cancellations. So what I was doing as a marketer before was I was working with small business owners, and I had 87 clients. So I had a book of 87 small businesses I was meeting with on a monthly basis to plan their marketing campaigns. And for the last 2 weeks of my job there, I was literally just taking cancellation calls from these small business owners.
Man.
Yep, and they're crying, right? I dumped my whole life savings into this. I cleared out my 401k.
Oh
I took my teacher's 403b plan, and I invested the whole thing into this business to start it up, and everything was great. And then this, so yeah, ended up getting laid off for that. Well, for the first month of COVID, I was just working out with my kids in the house, and we had a plan to like keep ourselves busy so we didn't drive each other insane. And then I started looking at my own finances, and I came to the realization that, hey, I could pay off the last of my student loans. So when I graduated from Scholastic, I actually had $75,000 in student loan debt. And yeah, I paid off the last $21,640 of that on May 21st, 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, that's crazy that you already have your school loans paid off when, like, for example, my mom is still paying on hers. So can you share like how you did that?
A plan. Yep. So Most people don't, like the saying goes, right? Most people don't
Mm-hmm.
plan to fail, they fail to plan. And I'm not trying to knock your mom or anything, but the reality is she's probably just been going through life, right? Like, I'm doing what I need to do. I'm making my payments. I'm, paying my bills,
Mhm.
whatever. And just like my mom did, right? She's woke up since 5:30 in the morning since I was a little kid and worked her ass off. Like, that's what she does. She's a worker. She doesn't complain. My Aunt Faye, she does the same thing. Doesn't complain, but they're not good planners, right? They're not planning long term. Like, how am I getting ahead? How am I building wealth? How am I, accruing assets? How am I doing these things? And if you don't have a plan for that, then you're essentially just bringing money in and pushing money out. So to be direct with you, what I did was just a personal analysis of my finances, right? I looked at what I had in assets, where was my cash at, where were my available assets, and then what did I owe? And when I realized I could pay off the last of my student loans and be totally debt free, I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel about the recent student loan forgiveness?
No, I don't mind. I'm glad that you brought this up. So I actually had private loans, so I wasn't going to be part of that anyway. But to answer your question, like, I think that just because I'm not the one being blessed doesn't mean that somebody next to me shouldn't be. Like, I think that is absolutely absurd that people are pissed about this, right? And they're, some people are like being super inappropriate, like, oh yeah, well, what about my mortgage? How come somebody's not forgiving my mortgage?
I see that all the time too.
You want to know a fun fact for you? George Bush actually ran stimuluses for people that purchased homes. So they were getting like $8,000 stimulus checks from Bush if you purchased a home.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the same thing as forgiveness, right? You're getting $8,000 in a stimulus check rather than, $10,000 in student loan forgiveness. So I don't know. I always think it's funny when people start complaining, well, how come somebody else is getting money? The people that were given student loans, in my opinion, were victims of predatory lending.
I agree too. Yeah.
Like no other lending system is going to give you that amount of money with no collateral, with no good credit, without jumping through a whole bunch of hoops. You sit down, you do like a 30 to 45 minute computer module training, and you have all of these people behind you, professors, teachers, decades worth of education that are telling you, hey, you go to school and you're going to make $100,000 a year. It's going to be awesome. And you'll have so much money to pay back all these debts. And then reality hits and it's like, oh, you make $35 or $35,000 a year as a marketing associate your first year, and you have $75,000 in student loans, and you absolutely can't afford to live.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
You're only making the minimum payment, so the interest is what's essentially killing you.
Mm-hmm.
And crazy, before this whole like student loan, like reconsidering how they're doing the system, you could have made every single payment on time in an income-based repayment plan and not even have paid all of the interest that was accruing.
Yep.
So you could have been making all your payments, and let's say you were accruing $150 a month in interest. You could have been making a $100 payment every month thinking, hey, I'm getting ahead of this. And then 5 years down the road, you look up and, the balance increased.
Yep.
How's that possible? I made every single payment on time. And people didn't even know that. So
It's sad. It's sad that, like, I think of my kids are, come out straight out of high school and then they'll be in immediate debt after. It's just crazy.
let's hope not.
Yeah.
Let's hope not. I mean, there's a huge push right now for trade schools and places like, paper mills and industrial manufacturing plants are paying kids to go get trade school degrees.
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of like our platform too is bringing that to light. Like, hey, you don't have to go through the traditional 4-year. You don't have to take out a bunch of student loans. You could get paid to go to school, and then once you're out of school, you can make $80,000 to $150,000 a year by going through the trade route.
Yeah, and that's wild. Honestly, I always get jealous when I hear people that have done that. I'm like, you're smart individuals. So, one thing that I wanted to point out, though, as we were talking about these student loans, is going back to that, I don't feel angry or upset that people are getting the forgiveness for that. Like, I couldn't be more happy. It's been so long. It's such a long time coming. This should have been done forever ago, and we should just be moving on with it.
Well, I mean, every other country has free schooling too.
Yeah.
So I feel like
the one argument that I think that the people are opposing the student loan forgiveness that I think is valid is that the system itself is still broken. right?
Right.
Like there is no requiring schools to reduce how much tuition they're charging or whatever. So yeah, it's sort of like you're drawing a line in the sand today, but the reality is the same problem could be perpetuated 20 or 30 years from now because the underlying problem hasn't been addressed yet.
Yeah, I've been reading like things about how they're giving forgiveness up to $10,000. That $10,000 technically doesn't really exist because of the interest rates.
Right.
So they're pretty much just giving away nothing almost, essentially.
One thing that I like, though, is that they were giving up to $20,000 in forgiveness if people had Pell Grant, if you had qualified for some Pell Grants.
Oh, really?
Which the only people that qualify for Pell Grants are, like, the poorest of the poor. So, like, you had to be poverty level or below, which is amazing. I mean, I think that it's fantastic that the government's finally stepping in and doing something fantastic for people who are at the lowest end of the low. Now, as to whether that's going to be a long-term fix or not, I mean, it really depends on the individual. Well, if the individual gets this blessing and this $20,000 in loan forgiveness, and then they decide to go take out a $25,000 car loan, they just washed all their blessing away, right?
Right.
So, need to make good choices with that money.
So, do you have a lot of experience? Like, you probably have clients that you work with for, say, day to day.
Yep.
Can you share like a common like situation like that would come for someone to come see you or seek out your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So a raise. It's so funny. It's either like a raise or an injection of, an asset, or I inherited something, or, I'm just tired of living paycheck to paycheck. It's a very common theme. And the reality is for most people, I mean, the only thing that they're missing is just a documented strategy, a plan, right? We don't plan to fail. We fail to plan. So the first thing I have almost everybody that comes into my office do is tell me how much money it costs them to live every month. And nobody can answer that question. And this is not even a demographic conversation. Like people that come into my office that are wealthy and people that come into my office that are not wealthy, neither of them can answer that question. How much does it cost you to, pay all your expenses every month? I mean, they can all figure it out, right? They can sit down, they can make a list of all their monthly expenses, the fixed expenses, things that are typical, and then, the variable expenses like our entertainment or utilities or gas.
Eating out.
Yeah, those kind of things. So, yeah. So that the recurring theme that I see is that nobody knows what it's costing them every month to survive.
So is that like your first step to advising somebody is like, hey, figure out what you spend monthly and then figure out what's left over?
No. So my first step to advising anybody is first I have to build trust, right? Because nobody's going to be honest with you if they don't trust you. So the first thing that I'm always doing is asking questions, right? What brought you in today? What are you hoping that we talk about at our meeting? Have you had any experience working with a financial advisor before? What do you have experience doing, right? And then from there, I'm always asking, right, like how much money is coming in and how much money is going out? Because realistically, if there's no surplus, meaning you're not making enough money to cover your normal expenses every month, well, then I know that something needs to happen. Either we need to reduce how much is going out or we need to increase how much is coming in. So first step to the process is always question answering. I got to know what brought the person in, what their situation looks like currently, and what they want their situation to look like. How am I going to be successful in their mind, right? How did I do my job in their mind? So
what's your typical day at the office look like then?
Ooh, man. Drop my kid off at work, get to the office probably 8:30 in the morning. I'll check the market out. I don't know why I do that. Honestly, it doesn't really make any difference for 90% of the people that I work with. But I'll check the market out just because I feel like I'm supposed to do that. Then I'll start replying to emails, start making my plan for the day, right? What am I going to – I always make like a top 3 to 5 tasks list, which is a practice that I started maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I did this organizational training with a former employer, and they said that if you had your big priorities for that day documented at the very beginning of the day, you were more likely to be more successful at the end of the week. So you string together a whole bunch of successful weeks, and now you have a successful career, right? So I'll start by putting like 3 to 5 tasks that I need to accomplish by the end of that day together, and then I'll go through those tasks. So it might be creating a financial plan for somebody. It might be just analyzing some investment options for somebody or some insurance options for somebody. And then from there, we'll usually run client meetings. And I usually do those depending on the client. If it's a young client that would be my age, I'll run that meeting by myself, right? I feel comfortable. That's my wheelhouse. But if I have an older client, sometimes I'll bring in an older advisor just to sit at the table. And I'll tell you an inside secret on that. Like, they don't usually do anything. Like, they sit next to me and just be old and nod their head in the affirmative. I'm like, your job is just to do this, right?
They're there for comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, older people don't want some, 35-year-old guy telling them how to plan their retirement, right? They're like, oh yeah, what the hell do you know? You're 35.
What do you know? You're 35.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll bring in like a 50 or 60-year-old guy in there who, obviously he's affirming that I've done this, right? He's done his due diligence and knows that I'm not an idiot. But yeah, it's really just a comfort tactic. So
That's cool.
and then at the end of the day, I'll do any follow-up and documentation that I need to do so that I don't forget anything. That's the most important part for me, is not forgetting what the client's goals and objectives are. So when I ask that, I need to make sure that I document that, because the reality is nobody's going to be happy with any service that you provide them if there's not a clear expectation set. So what are you trying to accomplish, and how are you documenting that, resharing that, reaffirming that, right? If I meet with you 6 months from now, your goals might be totally different.
Right.
So
are you with your clients for like a period of time? Does your service end, or like when do they know they can be without you?
that's totally up to them. So it's totally different for everybody. So depending on what kind of service I'm providing for them, if they want financial planning and they want me to do a deep dive into all their information, right? Like, what is their tax bracket? How much should I invest? What should I invest in? Where do I need insurances? Where are my risk categories, right? Like, what is exposing my plan to the most risk, right? Those clients are generally going to be a lot more meetings, right? So we might meet with them once a quarter, and we might do that for years.
Okay.
And then other clients who come in and they're like, yeah, I have this rollover from my previous employer. They said I have to get it out of there in a couple of years or a couple of months. Can you help me out? I'm like, yeah, we can absolutely help with that. So,
Do you work with mostly older people, or?
no, my book is actually pretty evenly split. So I would say half of my book is people that are under 50, and the other half is people that are over 50 and approaching retirement. And the real difference there in my mind is people that are younger they're either in the foundation section, which is like, we need to make sure that we are protecting what we're about to build, which is usually younger people, but sometimes people just kind of let that go until they get older, and then they got to start with the foundation in their 40s. But yeah, so younger clients, we're starting with the foundation, and then the older clients who have already accumulated the assets, now they're like, okay, well, I have done what I was supposed to do. Now how do I make this an income in retirement?
So have you seen a trend or something that that people are doing, like our age, our generation, that's hurting them in the long run?
Is it the Starbucks and avocado toast?
I don't know that it's a trend. I mean, like I said, so whether they're low income or high income clients that come into the office, they can't tell me how much it costs them to live every month, right? Well, whether it's a low income or a high income client that comes in, almost everybody is wasting money on something. Like, there's always like the accountant or the engineer or that like weird person that has no social life and is, counted every single penny for their whole life. Like, that anomaly of a human being comes in every once in a while. But the reality is we all waste money on something. So I don't know that our generation's got this huge trend of doing anything terrible that previous generations didn't, right? Like, how many people smoke cigarettes now compared to how many people smoked cigarettes before? Like, you went to school for marketing, so I'm sure you've seen some of those old marketing ads where it's like a pregnant lady in the hospital. And it's like, what flavor of cigarette would you like to relax, ma'am? Before this baby is born.
So what's the thing you waste money on?
Oh man, I waste money on tons of stuff. I like beer, like IPA beer, not like light domestic beer, which is lame and watery. I like cream ale from Castle Danger and Two Harbors.
Like craft beer then?
Yeah, craft beers. And I like taking trips with my kids, and I like toys. like 4-wheelers, snowmobiles. And I'm foolish about that because I very much like fixing them, which is stupid. I hate fixing them, but I like the idea of it. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be this cool guy that has this shop and a beard and a man bun, and like be out there hammering away on this like cafe racer motorcycle that I'm making, and it just turns into like this pile of junk sitting in the back of my garage.
And it takes you 7 years to even get out there and do something with it.
You been over my house? It's exactly how it is. It's sad. But yeah, that's my it's my kryptonite right there. That and my kids. My kids I hate giving my kids money on random times, but I don't know how it was for you guys. But when I was younger, I remember like it felt like I was always asking for something like sports equipment or a little candy bar or like name brand clothes or something cool or like a skateboard or like a top of the line BMX bike or whatever it may be. And I feel like when I was a kid, it was always no.
Yep.
Just no. And yeah, so I feel like our generation is totally like spoiled the shit out of our kids.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sure every generation says that, but it's like I feel like we have taken this over the top.
I try not to. So like when like my son wants a bike or something, I'm always like, well, what are you gonna do for the bike? Like, what are you gonna do like around the house, or what are you gonna do to work for the bike? But eventually, I just end up buying them.
So can I go back to the question about what our generation trending is wasting money on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that. Kids.
Kids.
No question. Spoiling the shit out of these kids.
Definitely.
Guilty.
I kind of want to circle back to you checking the market. You're talking about the stock market.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Do you do stocks?
So
Like-
I don't pick stocks, no.
Okay.
So I do not do that. Most financial advisors that people would meet with do not go into the market and pick stocks. Now, some of them might pick funds, which are going to be mutual funds, but mutual funds or index funds or
S&P, stuff like that.
Well, so the S&P is going to be an index, so that is going to be something that a fund would follow. So the best way I can explain this, I think, to a novice investor would be if I were to buy an individual stock, let's say GameStop, right? That's the one that's got recent publicity for going to the moon. So if I buy stock in an individual company, how likely is that company to go out of business? Well, it's very likely. It's just one company.
Yep.
Okay, so that company goes out of business. What happens to all the money that I've invested in their stocks? It's all gone. Well, most of the investing that people are doing with like their employer 401ks or 403b plans or other investments that you're going to have offered to you, you're going to be invested in funds. Well, those mutual funds or index funds or funds will have multiple companies in there. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of companies are held in those funds. Well, the difference there is how likely are thousands of companies to go out of business at the same time? Much less likely than one company. So, yeah. So, I mean, quickly, that's the easiest way that I can explain the difference between what people think about investing is like, oh, going to pick a single stock or investing for long-term goals like retirement. So when you're investing for retirement, you're trying to minimize your risk exposure in the market by having a fund rather than an individual stock held in that.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just thought people, a whole lot of people just like buy just stocks, not as a fund.
Well, good. I'm glad I taught you something today. I bet a lot of people, actually, I know a lot of people think that because they'll come into the office and they're like, well, what stock do I buy? They always ask that right away. It's like, we're not going to buy an individual stock. If you want to gamble, we can go to the casino. It'll be fun. It'll be just as much fun. Let's do that with our discretionary money, though.
What would you say to somebody who's looking for financial freedom? Like how, I know you said list out all the stuff you spend money on. How would you budget for like savings, paying off debts, the fun things and bills and stuff like that?
So the first step is always the plan. Like I want to know what's your plan. And if you don't have a plan, it's probably because you don't have goals. So realistically, maybe this first step I should articulate is goals, right? What is the purpose of this? When you say you want financial freedom, why do you want that, right? Like you don't want to live off in the woods and catch your own trout and shoot your own rabbits and feed yourself, right? Like, okay. Right. So what's the plan? What is the goal? What does happiness and surplus and financial freedom look like for you? because some people, you know, they can live off of a small amount of money while other people are thinking like millionaire lifestyle. I'm on Instagram and I believe all this crap that people are putting on there. It must be real. It's on the internet, right? But I would say the goal, right? So have a list of goals, and that should be changing all the time. So when I started working at the bank, so I used to work at a bank as well before I ever got into being a financial advisor. And at that time, I don't know what you know about bankers, but they don't make anything either. Like I was making way more money working for the casino than I was making when I worked at the bank. And so I was real tight. Like my budget was real tight because I'd make a list of all my expenses every month. And if anything was like $30 or $40 over what I had budgeted for. Yeah, it was like blowing up the whole plan. So, I mean, it was that tight for a little while. So I'm remaking the budget like on a daily basis. And then I got to the point where I'm like using an Excel spreadsheet to make my budget so that it was a little less daunting than writing it down on a piece of paper over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean, you need to have a goal, and after you have the goal, then you need to make a plan. And that's really what it comes down to. So, but the goal is absolutely priority number one.
Do you have any do you use any apps that track spending or anything like that?
I personally don't. I use what's called the zero budget method. So essentially I put all of the things that I'm going to put my money into, so saving, investing, monthly expenses, disposable, discretionary, all of those things are put into the budget. And then when the paycheck comes in, those things are allocated, and then whatever's left over is...
I've seen a couple of those TikTok, oh, we're putting $5 in the vacation fund today, and
yep,
we didn't make this much this month, so we're not putting anything in the travel fund, or...
Yep.
So it's kind of like that?
Yeah, everybody has their own method, right? There's the jars method. You know, people used to put money in jars or envelopes. I personally just have a whole bunch of different accounts. So like you were talking, oh yeah, the travel envelope or whatever.
Yeah.
You can go to a bank. There's no limit on how many accounts they'll let you open. As long as there's money in there, they'll usually just go ahead.
Oh.
You can have another savings account. So you can literally set up like a strategy for, you know, I want to have 2 vacations a year and it's going to cost me $5,000, whatever, you know. You could have a vacation fund that you're putting money into every month. If I know that I'm going to spend $5,000 on vacations every year, how much do I need to put in every month to make that happen every year? There you go.
See, I was reading this book called The Richest Man in Babylon.
Ooh, I love that book.
Oh, you read
Good
it too?
read. Yeah, the 10%. Put it away.
Yep.
Put it in your purse, and your purse will be full.
Yep. That's kind of like how I budget my stuff now after I read that book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just wondering what other things people can do.
All right. So 6 months, right? So everybody, I don't know how many people have emergency accounts. I know that I read a statistic, something like 50 or 60% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency, which is absurd, right? 6 out of 10 people you walk past, or 5 or 6 out of 10 people that you walk past couldn't cover a $400 emergency. Like, that is insane. So not having an emergency account it's a tragedy, really. You're just waiting for that thing to happen, because it's going to. Something's going to happen.
Right.
Transmission is going to go out. Your fridge is going to break. Heater's going to go out. Kid's going to need, to fix a broken arm. Whatever it is. I don't know what it's going to be, but something's going to happen. So if you have zero put aside for that emergency, or no plan for that emergency that's going to happen, yeah, your finances are a ticking time bomb. But what I would say is a good barometer, I've heard a whole bunch of financial professionals' opinions on this, but I think $1,000 is a great starting point. I think that 3 months worth of 3 months worth of your expenses is a better place to be. And I think that if you want to have financial freedom, like real financial freedom, you need 6 months or more of your monthly expenses in a savings account. And the reason I say that is, think about this, right? So in order for you to even accomplish this, right, to get 3 months worth of your monthly expenses in a savings account, you have to know what
your expenses are.
Yes, exactly right. You have to know what your monthly expenses are. So boom, I've already killed 2 birds with that stone. I know that you know how much your monthly expenses are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be telling me you have 3 months worth of it in there, or you're lying to me, right? But when you get to that 6 months, now this is what I want to focus on. I think that most people, that's their goal, and they don't even realize that it is their goal. They talk about financial freedom. They talk about not living paycheck to paycheck. They talk about, I don't want to be in poverty. I was raised in poverty. Well, when you have an emergency account, well, you've already broken a generational poverty trend right there. You have the ability to have money at your disposal that you're not spending. Okay? And then if you look at 6 months worth of savings in an account, like, dude, you got FU money. There's no other way to put that, right? You have Florida University money, we'll call it. And the reason I say that is because if I go to work today and my boss is just on one and he's being ridiculous and I hate my job, I hate being there, I hate what I'm doing, I have 6 months worth of monthly expenses to figure it out. So I'm like, I'm not here because I have to be here for work. I'm here because I want to be here. And as soon as that change, I'm not going to come into work anymore. I got half of a year to find another job to pay me. So when you're talking about freedom, I mean, that's what it is. In my opinion, if you have the resources to not have to go to a place you don't want to be, you have freedom. You have choices. You have options.
I like it.
Yeah.
So how do you get from, like living paycheck to paycheck to actually building up a 6-month cushion, I would say?
I'm glad that you asked me that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, what would be your first step based on the conversation we've had up to this point? If you were trying to build some financial freedom for yourself, what would be your first step?
So if I was like living paycheck to paycheck or whatever,
Yep.
I do, my monthly expenses.
Yep. Why?
See how much I'm spending.
That's exactly.
Find my goal that I need to be at for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then, like, if I need to make cuts, I guess, find out what I'm wasting money on, and then just stop doing those things. But the only problem is, like, I like doing
I like doing those. I like
Yeah.
spending money.
Yeah.
So let's not get focused on the cutting, right? Because that's the reality. So people get stuck in that mindset like, oh, if I build this budget, it's a diet for my money.
Yeah.
Like, no, dude, a budget is not a diet for your money. It's a plan for your money. It's you telling your money where to go rather than asking where it went. So when I go out and give presentations to like middle school and high school kids, like these kids don't have an idea what the hell a budget is. Like they don't have expenses.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if 1 out of like 100 of these kids is paying their own cell phone bill, right? So they don't know anything like that. So how do I teach them about building a budget? Well, I play a game with them. I write down $1,000 on the whiteboard. I'm like, okay, if I gave you $1,000 today, what would you spend that money on? Then they'll list it out. I'll give them a minute or two, and then I'll put $10,000 on the board. I'm like, well, if I gave you $10,000 today, what would you spend that money on? And then, I'll give them a couple more minutes. That's a little bit more money in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're free at that point. And then I'll write down $100,000. And in most kids' mind, that's like an inconceivable amount of money. Like, am I really going to get that at one point in my life?
It's so much V-Bucks.
Right. And so that one, I'll give them a substantial amount of time. And you can just see it. Like, people say that they hate to make a budget, but when you give a kid this exercise, they get like all excited. They're like, and they don't want to save it, or they don't want to save what they're going to do with their money to themselves. They want to tell me right away. They want to speak on it. Like, I would do this, I would do that, I would buy this, I would buy that, I would start this business, I would buy these, like, I don't know, just crazy stuff that these kids will come up with. And they're like so excited to tell me everything that they're going to do with it as they're writing it down. So when people are like, oh, I hate making a budget, I'm like, nah, you got your mind all twisted up right now. Like, just think about getting money and how would you spend it if you got it. That's all the building a budget is. Yeah. So, yeah. When you say you like doing these things, generally when people are making a list of their monthly expenses, they start to realize where they're wasting money. Well, you tell me that you like doing these things. Well, do you have a list of goals that you like more than those things? Because that's really what it is. It's a give and take, right? So I like going to the casino and playing the slot machine and drinking my IPA. Okay, well, is there anything I would rather be doing with that money? Would I rather take a trip with my family? Would I rather buy a dirt bike? Would I rather buy a mountain bike? Would I rather buy some gym equipment for my garage? And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be only focused on what am I eliminating, right? I mean, there are options, right? So we're looking at our income. We're looking at our expenses. Mm-hmm. We realize, okay, we can save a little bit of money, but we could also go figure out ways to increase our income, right? Does that mean getting a part-time job? Does that mean negotiating for a raise? Does that mean taking a different job? Whatever it may be. So, yeah, let's just not focus on cutting, right? We can increase as well. If we're really trying to get out of that survival mindset,
Right.
Let's start thinking about how we can live in abundance.
I like it. Those are a lot of good, helpful tips.
I did want to that kind of brought up another question. You know, the budget that you do for middle school kids, 100,000, 10,000, 100,000.
1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'd never go to $100. I mean, even to a high school kid, it's like $100, bro. Like, I'm not even doing the dishes for that.
What would you say to some of the Native Americans who get like their giant per cap when they turn 18?
Yep. So, same thing. I mean, just because you're brown doesn't mean you get different advice from me. The reality is, dude, have a plan. Like, and not a plan, like, in the back of my mind, I kind of know I want these 5 things, right? I probably want a car. I probably want some updated clothes. I probably want to give my mom, my dad, my cousins, and all these people that I love a little bit of cash, you know, help them out. You know, I want to save some, right? Like, you should have a plan. But if I'm being more specific about it, stop thinking about the money as, like, this is this amount of money that I have in this account that I can spend. It's mine. Okay? I'll relate it to another life experience. So I had my son when I was very, very young. So I was 19 when he was born. And I remember the first year that Ashley, his mom, and I got a tax return. And it was like $8,000. Couldn't believe it. And yeah, so me and her tricked off, and we lived like a king and queen for about 4 weeks. You know what I mean? It was like we had $8,000. We had never had that much money in our lives. We were like, oh, yeah. A month later, all gone. And we're back to exactly where we were 4 weeks before. Well, the problem with that thinking is we did that for a couple of years. And then finally, I don't remember if it was her or me, but we were just like, you know what? We should make this last longer. So we started like brainstorming some ways to do that. And one of the solutions that we came up with was mapping out 12 months. So I think the following year we ended up getting something like $6,000 or $7,000. Let's just say it's 6 for easy math. So we end up getting a $6,000 tax return. Well, instead of thinking I got $6,000 in my bank account, we started thinking we have $500 extra a month that we can spend. So we didn't have $6,000 anymore. We had $500 extra to help us get through the year. So that $400 emergency that was going to happen was a little less of an emergency.
Ooh, that's a really good tip.
So if you think about getting $120,000 per cap when you turn 18 years old, well, instead of thinking like, oh, I got this 120 G's coming in, it's like, okay, I got $10,000 a month I can save, or I can give myself throughout this next 12 months. And if you want it to last longer, well, then just bring it out, right? So instead of 12 months, make it 120 months. Now I got $1,000 a month I can give myself
for the next 10 years.
Right. But again, I mean, what are most people after when they say that they want financial freedom? In my mind, it's what? How many months of savings?
6.
6, right. So if this 18-year-old can come up with a number of like, I want to live like a $3,000 a month lifestyle. Okay, well, what's 6 times 3? Here we go. Let's put that away, never touch it again. Like, it's always there. You're given your freedom at 18. Whether you make the most of it or waste it, that's totally up to you. Well, what should I do with the money? Well, it doesn't really matter. You're the one that's coming up with that goal. It's not a financial advisor's job to tell you how to spend your money, what to do with your money, or what your goals are. And if you have an advisor who's telling you need to grow your money, well, okay, for what? Why am I doing this? Nobody's going to stick to a plan if they don't have a purpose for it.
Right.
So,
yeah, I see a bunch of financial advisors on TikTok saying, take this money, put it here, put it here, put it here. And next thing you know, you have 10 million in the bank. And it's like, some people don't have that kind of money to do that either. Like, some people would be like, oh, in 3 months you should have 10 grand. It's like, not necessarily.
The problem with generalized advice is, it's got to be sensible to the masses, but it's not going to be good for every individual.
And it always makes sense when, you're not actually living paycheck to paycheck.
And let's be honest, right? Let's break this down. Money is nothing more than a resource. It's a bartering chip.
Yep.
That's all that it is, right? Like, how much money would I have to give you to give up your kids or your woman? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a resource. It's
not
not
an actual offer.
But it's like, people need to stop thinking about it like it's this, omnipotent, holy thing or something, or, magnificent medicine, or like, it's not special. It's a chip to barter. That's what it is. It's a resource that we can utilize, we can make the most of, or we can waste and be foolish with. So, I mean, we have resources. How do we make the most of them? And we do that by making a strategy and listing out what we want it to do for us. And once we have clear-cut goals, we know whether the things that we're doing are serving us or not. Like if I know that I want to be in shape and I wake up and I eat McDonald's breakfast every single day and I refuse to go to the gym, am I likely to get into this beautiful bodybuilding figure that I want to be? No. It's reality, dude. Do I have a goal or no? If I don't have a goal, well, then who the hell should I be mad at that I didn't get there?
Right.
Awesome. Well, I think you served a lot of people. I know I need to reevaluate my own finances. So if anyone would like your service or reach out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
Oh, you can contact me directly. My email is Christopher, so CHRISTOPHER .Hennigan, HENAGIN @Thrivent.com. Thrivent's THRIVENT. Yeah. Otherwise, you can always reach me on Facebook, internet. I got a website. I got LinkedIn, all that. And I'm happy to connect with anybody who's interested in either following me or talking to me or just wants anything. So.
Cool.
That's very cool. Thank you
Yes.
for all your tips and tricks. And
I know I'm gonna have to go home and write a bunch of write my monthly expenses out now and
What should you start before the budget? What should you write first?
figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
Figure out my goals.
That's exactly right. That's the big thing. Most people don't, instead of walking up to each other and being like, hey, how you doing? Be like, hey, what are your goals? And I bet the vast majority of people that you ask that questions to would be like,
I don't know.
what are you talking about? The hell's wrong with you, dude? You tripping? Yeah. So I can't speak enough to having a purpose, right? So when you have a goal, it's much more likely to happen. So if we started thinking about ourselves as individual small businesses instead of, an employee, I think that all the perspective changes, right? You guys are setting up this podcast, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the goal for the podcast? How are we conducting our day-to-day operations? What is it costing us to have this podcast? And I bet you guys put a lot of thought into it, and you were probably nervous and scared before you did it, and you had all these plans and whatever. But the reality is you had to have something written down so that you could all collaborate, because what Alyssa's thinking is not what Ricky's thinking, is not what Morgan's thinking. And you knew that going into this, you all collaborated to make a plan. So I think that if we all start thinking about our own personal finances as a small business that we're operating, and whether or not we're successful in our personal finances is how successful our business is, right? So is my small business effective or not? And if it's not, who's responsible? Well, I'm the CEO. So who the hell am I blaming, right? It's not like, the chairman didn't give me this, or the res didn't give me that, or the government stimulus, blah, 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 blah. No, dude, you're the CEO of your company. All of these risks and all of this, BS in the world, those are all things that a small business owner was going to encounter. You knew that, right? Being alive is risky. You're not going to get out of this alive. So stop pretending that there's no risk and everybody else's fault, right? Be the CEO of your company.
I like
Love it.
that quote.
I know my brain's like, okay, save that.
Cool.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for
Thank you, Chris.
coming down and
This
making me reevaluate my life.
This has been fun. I honestly love it. I mean, even just putting the headphones on and
Mm-hmm.
hearing my voice in this podcast, I'm like, this is cool.
Do you like hearing your own voice in there? Because when I do it, I'm like, ugh, I don't like it.
I don't want to hear myself.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's exciting because it's brand new, right? I'm sure after I've done this 1,000 times, it'll be like, oh, not again.
Yeah.
Tired of hearing this damn voice. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting right now.
Cool. Well, should we revisit the trivia question?
Sure. It was, which company makes most money per second?
Amazon.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'll say Disney.
Ooh, Disney is a good one.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Disney, sneaky owns a whole bunch of small
Yeah.
endeavors.
I don't know. That's my guess. I wish it was myself.
I don't know. Just go with Walmart.
You're actually the closest.
Ooh.
Amazon, according to this website, Tipalti, I think it's called, Amazon is 10th at $367 a second.
Wow.
Disney is 12 with 350, and Walmart makes $472 a second. But the number one is Apple with $1,752 a second.
Get out of here. All the people in those Birkenstocks buying those iPads and AirPods.
So yeah, during this episode, they've made millions.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
How much was their number? What was it?
1,752
A second.
a second.
That is wild. That is wild.
But yeah,
Dang.
so
I'm just like,
Taken
my
back.
mind is blown.
in like 20 seconds, that's your car.
Thanks.
just to put that in
Just a
perspective.
Yeah. It's mine in like 2. So
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming down and chatting with us and
this has been great.
giving us
Yeah,
some
we had a
advice.
good time.
Yeah.
I appreciate you reaching out to me. Honestly, it's funny because Herb was the one that told me about this, and it's like, yeah, you should go do that. I'm like, dude, I'm totally down. Talk to anybody. I'll talk about money all day.
Yep. So thank you, Herb. Chimaingan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, Chimaingan now.
Yep.
That's right.
Well, anyway, thanks for joining us today, and we hope you guys have a great upcoming weekend.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.
See y'all.